everyone. Today we're going to paint some birds. Some I've painted are very impressionistically painted. They're almost abstract, while others are more realistic. I have some far off in the distance and some of them very up close, showing every feather and every little twinkle in the eye. Some are just little sketches that I did quickly in 15 minutes. And others took time to paint in every single bird with all their little reflections. These big dopey birds were actually in the park looking exactly like that. And this little guy is on a rock in the back there. You can hardly notice him. This one's a little watercolor. And this one here, I believe I did in acrylic. So I'm always painting birds of some kind. These little sandpipers coming up were adorable too. But today we're going to paint some seagulls on the beach as sun was going down and reflecting their shadows in the wet sand. So I'm showing you a size 8 brush here. It's natural bristle. And why am I using that? Because I want a fairly large brush so I don't make too much detail. And I'm going to be scumbling a little bit because this painting is about seagulls standing on the wet sand, throwing a reflection as the sun was going down. So I start with colors that are a little darker right on the edge there. The room is fairly dark because I have a hard time painting with reflections. My eyes do not like the light. So when I turn the lights on later, you will see the colors are slightly different. But the sand is more yellow up in the corner. It becomes a little more greenish, maybe, I don't know, goldish toward the edge there, right as it meets the water. Here I'm putting in some water with just ultramarine blue and a dash of black to dull it just a little bit. It may look like I'm doing nothing in the middle here, but I'm putting in titanium white. And why am I doing that? Because sometimes I like to actually mix on my canvas, which is what I'm about to do here. I'm adding a little blue now, and that is fading out that blue so that it's like a white blue. And then I'm going to mix it into the darker colors on either side of it. And that's how I'm going to blend this. Then I'll pull the lights and the darks back and forth, push and pull until I get what looks like a pretty nice reflection. See how the edge, right as it meets the water, is a little darker. Darker blue, lighter sand, darker sand. And now I'm putting in some little reflections right where I know I'm going to be putting these birds. There's going to be like 4 or 5 birds in this painting. And this is kind of holding a place because I know this is telling me where those birds are going to go. This is a simple painting, which makes you have to do a pretty decent job on it because you don't have a lot of places to hide your boo-boos. Anyway, this is how I begin. I'll let this dry overnight a little bit, and then we'll work at it again in the morning. I'm using my Murphy's oil soap that I squirt in this little container. Move my brushes around. Scrubby, scrubby. You see all that color coming out? Water rinse. If I want to, I can dip back into it again. It's not as strong once it's wet with water. It does a much better job on a brush that doesn't have a bunch of water in it. But I've already cleaned it, so now we're just cleaning it a second time. Okay, now I'm going to rinse this And just to test, let's see if it's clean or not. Dump out as much of the water as you can. Put a little more in here. Take your little brush. Scrub, scrub, scrub. Not changing much. Get down in the ferrule. Don't crush it. Don't smash it this way, like straight down, but do it from the side so that you get up in the ferrule. You see that color coming out of there? That is oil pink. That makes your brush very stiff up by the ferrule of the brush. And once that dries in there, you're not going to get that out. My brushes have lasted me for many, many, many years. So many people say they only get a couple of uses out of their brush and then that's it. No, ma'am. Treat your brushes right, they'll treat you right. Nice, fine edge on it again. And clean brushes, hooray, they're like new. They'll dry in an hour or so and be perfect. So I'll turn this light up for just 1 second so you can see the difference with the light on. See how much lighter the sand is and the water. Much more like you would expect it to be. There's still some adjusting I'm going to be doing. I think I would like to, I don't know, maybe bring this out a little more here and this in a little more. I'll have to look at it. I don't like how it's quite so symmetrical. So I want something, maybe this piece will come out this way a little more. Probably. Well, it's time for my birds to start chirping, so they may be interfering with this video, but I hope it's not too annoying. I'm going in and changing the shape just a little bit on this, and probably I will change it again before it's over. I'm trying to put a little more of an angle on it. I don't want it looking quite so round. A little more spiky on the edges. I will eventually probably put a little cerulean blue in here because all different color blues are reflecting off of this beautiful sand. Yes, this is crazy, but I do put my reflections in on this painting before I put the birds in. Why? Because it's so easy to remove these reflections, but it's much harder to remove the birds if I don't like where I'm placing them. Yes, I do have a photo, but I don't necessarily follow it exactly the way it happened in real life because that may not be pleasing in my painting. It's close to the way they were actually placed, however. When I take a photo, I'm usually thinking about a painting. I will adjust this bird again several times. Why? Because he's the front bird, he's the main focal point, and I have to put him in here proportionally correct. How big is he? It's hard to realize how large your front bird is because you're thinking it's just a tiny bird, but he actually will have to be adjusted a couple of times until I get his size correct. The birds in the back will be more impressionistic. You will know that they're birds. You will see their gesture. This one is just landing or taking off. I don't know which. There's another one whose wings are partially up. You know, when they go to take off, they flap their wings, but when they land, they also just sort of bring their wings down. This one here that I'm working on now may be taking off, or he may be just landing also. So I love these little gestures. And really that's all you need in the back birds. But I'll use a smaller brush to get a tiny bit more detail on them, not a lot. I also have to look at certain things like where the bird is white, I need to have darker blue so you can see the actual bird. In other words, if I have a white bird and white sand, you're not going to see anything. So I will go back and see if I need to darken around the bird or lighten around the bird in order to make him show up. So I put all the dark in on all the birds at the same time. Why? Because they're not birds, they are shapes. And in this case, I'm putting in the dark shapes. And when I have that color on my brush, I go around and use it. I'm putting some darker dabs in, which are actually the shadows of these seashells and rocks. Shadows first, because they're underneath, and then on top, I go and put the white or the light. So each of these tiny little shells actually has its own shadow. And that gives a little bit of a three-dimensional look. Down below where we have the lighter sand, I have to use a darker color, or you would not see these. So you see what I'm saying about dark and light. Who would think that the sand has so many colors in it, but it does. But I keep telling myself, am I getting it too dark? Am I getting it too light? Is it too blue? Is it too green? Is it too red? Is it too yellow? It's a constant reassessment. So now I'm putting in some of the light on the birds. It doesn't matter that this light just happens to be the chest of the bird, or the breast of the bird, or the head of the bird, or the highlight that the bird is throwing. It just happens to be the color and shape that I see on the bird and below the bird. And lo and behold, it's making a bird, and it's making a reflection of a bird. I just realized it was a little guy way back there. There is one here, but he's mostly white, so I haven't put him in yet. So I'm going to start his little shape. Now I'm really afraid when I have to start using a smaller brush and putting in detail, because that's where you can ruin your painting. I save that for last. I'm going to sweat it out and hope that I don't overdo it. Yes, it's kind of hard to paint with a big brush, but it sure doesn't let you put in detail. You are trapped into having to use the edge of that brush into putting in a shape. These birds need legs, and their reflection is far enough below them. I may have to actually increase it on this front bird. He's going to be probably put in a little bigger. I will have to drop his shadow down farther. It's not that close to his body. So everything in art is reassessing, correction, correction, correction. And step back or take a photo and look at it so that you can gain perspective and see whether you are in fact on target where you need to be. You see how now when I put the light on the bird in the back, you know you're looking at a bird flapping his wings. So I messed with this bird, and he was fine the way he was. Absolutely nothing wrong with him. But I did not want that posture. I wanted him with his back straighter and just a different posture where his back was almost straight and his head was down a little lower. So you will see me mess with him and finally wipe him out. So on each bird I go in and I put in a little bit of the shadow color, a little bit of the highlight. I try to move around the painting equally, a little here, a little there, never completely developing anything. I'm using a pointy brush now, so I can get in a little more detail than I had. I still call this gestural because I'm really not trying to put it in detail. Here's a little bit more of the sparkly rocks and shells on the beach, coquinas. There were lots of coquinas out there. Those little tiny shells that when the water rushes in, the little coquinas bury themselves in the sand. They're like tiny little clams. I'm still going to go in, I think, with just the tiniest little bit of cerulean blue here and there. This has all been done with one blue, ultramarine blue. And you can see how if you mix it with red, or you mix it with black, or you mix it with yellow ochre, you get completely different blues. Here I am wiping out my main bird that I spent so much time on because I just don't like him. There isn't any logical reason except I just don't like him. I want him to lean more forward. So his whole posture has to change a little bit. Because these birds were looking for coquinas. So they were sort of stretched out, or he was. That's more the posture that I think he was supposed to have. I would say we're done with this. I don't really want to develop it much more than that. Kind of gives the feeling of what I was going for. One thing I just keep thinking about doing though, I know it's crazy, but I really want to do it and I don't know why, is I really want this to come out a little more. Don't wipe my bird out, please. I guess in order to do that, I just have to come in with a little darker underneath it. What do I think about that? I think I like it. Maybe a little dark on top of it. And I guess we'll call it quits. Sort of kind of pretty? Hoping. Stop touching it. This is how you ruin things. Okay, I'll leave it alone. Hope y'all enjoyed that, everyone. Just a simple painting of some birds at sundown. And we will see you for the next one. Thanks for watching. And remember, you can paint too.